the Energy Tech Podcast presented by Offsite Energy. Today, joining the studio remotely, we have special guests Al Caceres and Pat Smith from Avadine. Guys, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hey guys, welcome in. I am your co-host Mike Flotis with the Energy Tech Podcast. That's right, Jeff. We are live here at the studio for the Energy Tech Podcast, right in the heart of the Offsite Energy Control Center, and we have some really great guests on the show joining us from, where are you guys at? California right now. Our friends there at Avadine. Al, good to see you on the show. And of course, Pat Smith, good to have you guys from Avadine here to talk about the Ignition Native Pump-Off Control, otherwise known as IPOC. We've been trying to make this happen, and guys, it's good to have you here, man.
Yeah, thank you for having us, Mike. We're great to be here. We're happy to be here and chat with you about IPOC for sure.
Yeah.
So you guys are out in Bakersfield, right? Is that right?
That's right. Yep.
And we actually were out in Bakersfield, I don't know, 3-4 months ago. Mike went several trips, but we weren't able to connect with you guys. But I do remember we did connect with you guys in Sacramento up at ICC, and y'all were, at that time kind of just then debuting your new product, right? Is that right? About the time?
They were. So I think at that time, you guys were at ICC and you made a really great announcement, a lot of firsts for Ignition. Aside from the new venue and the release of 8.3, a lot of that was also the introduction of IPOC as a partner with Ignition, which is a big deal, especially because it represents a large part of Ignition's industry, which is oil and gas and production, to be more specific. And so it's great to have you guys as part of that, as part of the show. And when we met you, I mean, there was a lot of excitement about the product, a lot of things, and we talked about doing a demo. And so right now, we had the small intro with you, Al, back in September of last year, where we talked about IPOC, we talked about a bit about Avadine. But anyone that's going to start, watching, maybe this is your first time in meeting these guys. Maybe you guys give us a quick intro of Avadine and what you each do there at Avadine specifically, and then what Avadine's all about. Then we'll dive right into IPOC.
Sure. Yeah. So Avadine's been around for about 30 years or so. We work primarily in the software space and oil and gas. That's been the bread and butter for a long time. About 15 years ago, not 15 years, sorry, about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, we started dabbling in the ignition space for a pretty big oil and gas project.
Yeah.
And then from there, we built a team, and the team was very effective. And we decided to continue with those efforts, and we started just by word of mouth and started doing more ignition projects like that. But on the software side, we have a few different software platforms besides IPOC that serve different industries. We have one called WellTrack, which is an oil and gas space, operational data, workflow data. We have Lattice, which is an ag water district. So being here in Central Valley, we have a lot of farmers, and they all need water, and we helped a few solve that problem. So it's kind of grown into something bigger. And we also have another platform called GraySwift, which GraySwift is an asset and maintenance management software solution. So all these software platforms are all kind of based around operational data. So makes sense that we are serving that side, and then also now taking a deep dive into the ignition world and the SCADA world, and have done several full project deployments from comm to panel building to writing all the ignition HMI application.
Well, that's interesting. You guys are like solving problems that are like right there local to Bakersfield, right? Like with the ag and, I don't know if anyone's ever been out there, but it sounds like everything you guys are touching are like problems that you can, literally get in the truck and drive 10 minutes down the road and look at your application running, or that's kind of cool. I just think that's anyone who's been out there or knows the area, that's just kind of unique, I think. So interesting.
Yeah. And speaking of being local, Pat, tell us a little bit about you, man. Your relationship there at Avadine and IPOC.
Yeah, I'll give you my background. So I've been in the automation industry for about 17 years now. Started at a large oil and gas operator company here in Bakersfield, and actually started in operations there. I started as a field operator. Before that, went to school for computer engineering, but started at this company as an operator. So I wouldn't trade that for anything. The experience I got actually working the field and doing that job, I think really applies to the solutions we're providing and having that kind of firsthand experience of what the challenges are and what those guys actually go through on a day-to-day basis, having done it myself, working in the field and operating and controlling these facilities. It was a good experience. And then I moved into the automation space as a SCADA and PLC developer, and did that for about 8 years out in the field, and took that experience and moved into the office and was an architect, solutions architect, then an OT architect, and then I was the chief architect for the company, integrating the OT systems into the IT systems. So a wide range of experience in terms of automation, but also architecture, system integration, infrastructure, all that goes into an enterprise. So that's kind of my background. The interesting thing about my background is, at the time when I started in automation, we were using a different legacy SCADA platform, not Ignition. And the company was not happy with the licensing costs and with the maintenance that went into it and all the complexities of that system. We were actually the largest implementation of that platform in the United States. And so I was tasked with trying to find an alternative, and that's when we found Ignition. And I became the lead developer and led an entire department of Ignition developers in-house. So that's where my background started with Ignition. I've been working with Ignition for 15 years now. I actually met Avadine because I hired them as a consultant and a contractor on one of my projects at that company. I brought them in to help assist us in rewriting that application. We actually had 40 very large applications in that platform, and Avadine helped with that project to convert all of those applications to Ignition over the course of about 6 years. And so when I made the switch in my career and left that company, Avadine said, "Hey, we've been working a long time together. Why don't you come over here and help? Let's do what we did at that company, but do it with Avadine for a lot of other companies. Let's take the goodness that we've done for the last, a decade, and let's take all of the things that we've learned and all the good work that we've done and apply it for other operators throughout the industry."
Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Great story. Yeah.
No, it is. And Jeff, you said something earlier. I want to tie this in together because Pat and Al, I think what has happened here, so Jeff alluded to, you are doing things there locally that solved problems for your customers, your clients. And I think, in my mind, when people are looking at innovation, it is not just something that comes to you in the shower or, hey, I had this dream. A lot of this it's because of something that happens in your industry where you see a problem, you work yourself backwards. You say, if I'm going to be an innovator, if I'm going to build something that is going to benefit these customers, I'm going to work my way backwards from the issue in the field. I'm going to apply my experience, and I'm going to pick that up, and I'm going to help a client. And we're going to get to IPOC, but I just want to address that. I think that's something that a lot of oil and gas customers are looking for in terms of when they look at Avadine or they're looking at OpSite with a control room. They're really looking to solve a problem that they have. And it's like innovation happens when you're in that problem. And that experience is showing, especially with you, with your team and the introduction of IPOC. And it sounds like you not only were innovating, but you also ran into the notorious, what I call a paywall platforms that are out there, that are large scale platforms that sometimes do not grow. They have additional costs. They're usually these per tag behemoths.
I'm curious what his cost was on the. Now we won't miss you names, Pat. I mean, I'm curious what your top line was on that. the largest build of that particular product, and then what what the change was over time as y'all offboarded onto Ignition. That'd be interesting to find out. So
Yeah, in terms of dollars, I think that's an interesting part is cost. But more than anything, I think it's not just what you're doing as far as innovation, breaking down that whole paywall piece, but it's also helping other producers. It sounds like you stepped out of that and said, I don't just want to do this for us. I want to do this for other producers where we can help solve those problems. So in saying that, kind of talk to us, because we've got listeners on the show, and these are field superintendents. These are automation techs. These are SCADA developers. There's SCADA guys, SCADA people, SCADA women that are on the show. A lot of them are oil and gas. They're in the space, and they're looking for a solution. So tell us kind of what IPOC is, the pump off control, what it represents, and how you guys, right now, how you introduce the product and how it pairs well with Ignition.
Sure. Yeah. So I like that you mentioned sharing our experience and knowledge and solutions with the community, because I think that's really what it's all about, right? This kind of like money grab mentality, or I'm not going to share what I know because you're going to become a competitor and you're going to gain an advantage. I hate that. It's not a good ecosystem. It's not a good business model. It may start out exciting, but everyone's always upset at the end. I've never seen a different scenario. And that's the thing I love about inductive automation and the Ignition platform. From the get-go, it's been a community ecosystem. I mean, years ago, before even Ignition started, and it was called Factory SQL, it was about sharing the code. But when they rebranded to Ignition, they came out with their cloud template library, and it was a way for users to like just share the stuff that they made for free. And now in Ignition 8.1 and 8.3, it's their Ignition Exchange. It's if you've made something and you want to share it with the community, throw it up there, and everyone can download it. It's that kind of, if I made something and it benefits me and I can give it to you and it benefits you, then we're all winning, because you're going to make something that I'm going to want to take advantage of. So it's a huge, I think it's a huge shift in how you view solutions and sharing ideas. I love it. That's the thing that really, one of the things besides the price, is one of the things that drew me to the product itself. But that's why we chose to put IPOC in a platform like Ignition. Yeah. It's because we can take advantage of that already mature ecosystem and community and just plug it in. And then you get all the bells and whistles that Ignition has for free, pretty much for free. But it's you're built on a platform that does all the SCADA pieces really well. And then we can throw our flavor in there with our solutions, solving a specific problem for the oil and gas industry, and not throw a huge price tag on it. Yes. To follow that same model, to say, hey, we have a solution and we think it's going to solve your problem, the problem that every oil operator has. Nobody has a different problem. They're all almost identical. But the lift, whether it's rod lift or ESP or plunger lift, all the different technologies, they're all facing the same problem. They need to view the data, right, and they need to control the wells remotely. And this product does that. So that's what IPOC is. It's a way to monitor and control your wells from a remote central location, and it's built on Ignition. So it's putting Ignition at the wellhead, which, to my experience, Ignition is kind of a facility platform. It's at the dehighs, it's at the water plants, it's at the cogeneration facilities, but it's not on the wellhead. And so we said, let's make a product in Ignition that we can put on the wellhead.
Yeah. Pat, let me ask you this question, because I think if you're a producer and there's flavors of pump off control that exist out there. And if I'm correct, or you help me out here, because if you're a producer, you're sort of beholden to some of these other products. In other words, you grew up on them, or you're used to them, or someone tells you, hey, there's this flavor of pump off control. You go get them. The same way that if I was working with PLCs, I might not work with an edge device. They might say, well, go grab yourself an Allen Bradley. No one's ever gotten fired for installing an Allen Bradley. And I feel like in the pump off control side of the business in production, you sort of have that. And that data tends to sit in its own little monolith, right? A monolith, just straight up silo, and you have to unstuck it, right? It's kind of like stuck data. Talk about that for a second, because I think if I'm a production superintendent, I'm looking at cost, but I'm also looking at how do I get this data out to operations?
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. There's one or two products that are the monopoly products out there. Every single oil and gas operator we've talked to uses one of these two products. And they are that paywall model. They are very expensive. They look like they're running on Windows 95. They haven't had a facelift.
Yeah.
They haven't been updated. The data is, like you said, it goes into a database, and that's where it dies. That's where it's at. It doesn't integrate with other technologies. It doesn't plug into all these cool tools that we hear about, hey, just connect it to the cloud. Hey, just publish it and subscribe and build your own report in Power BI. It lives and dies in that platform, but there's no alternative. There's no other tool out there that users can just go grab and monitor their wells and connect to their pump off controllers and do analysis and control their wells.
And democratize the data all at once, right?
Absolutely.
So that's the big one that I'm hearing is there's no other solution on the market that allows you to own your data and do other things with it outside of controlling that well right there and using it to look at that well. So that's a huge one, man. I think all roads are leading to a demo, guys, and let's put eyes on what we're talking about. But that's a really great stage to set for how this is a little bit different than what you've seen before. And how, one, I'm assuming the cost, it has got to be astronomically cheaper than what we've talked about on the other two platforms that I've known for very many years. And plus, you kind of own this, right? It's part of your ecosystem.
Correct.
And by the way, if you weren't on Ignition before, great. Now you've got a new SCADA system that you can deploy the rest of your bells and whistles on too. So
yeah, exactly. That's kind of the idea, right? If you already have Ignition, this just plugs in. If you don't have Ignition and you choose to use IPOC, now you have Ignition and you can start doing all the other cool things that product can do, right? It's an integration platform. So it unlocks a lot of doors.
cool.
Yeah, so I'll tell you what, guys, we've got plenty of time, and we can walk through your demo. Let's do that, because if you're watching or listening right now, we really want to hear from you and get your comments. And, if you are a production foreman, a production superintendent, a well tech, well tender, if you're somebody that is charged with downhole optimization of any kind, and you guys over there at Avadine, you're talking about your different wellhead types. You certainly want to pay attention to what these guys are going to demo here. And Pat, while you set up and do that, we're going to talk through some of the features. Al, tell us what your customers, while you do that, Pat, Al, tell us what your customers are saying. I mean, obviously you guys have, you're evangelizing the product. What is it that your customers are saying and maybe they're seeing in terms of IPOC?
Yeah, so we have quite a few customers now that are using IPOC, and I think initially the trials have gone pretty quickly. Deployment of the trial is very fast, and that's something they've all noted, that it was very quick and easy to get everything over. And then aside from that, the decision to go ahead and leave the legacy platform and move forward with IPOC is happening, very fast before the trial's over. So I think that speed and the ease of what a transition could look like is a big thing that we're hearing. Is they didn't expect it to go that simple. we just released a case study for Magnolia Oil and Gas, and they did a conversion, and yeah, you could see in the case study that it was a very simple transition for them, getting all their historical data after the fact. It was very simple, and they had some pieces in place already. They already had Ignition. They were using AutoSol as an OPC server, so it was just a very easy transition for them. But that's what we're hearing from the customer, or the customers so far, is just that everything seems to be very simple, very easy. The UI is, it's modern compared to the legacy platform or platforms, and the fact that mobile is right out of the box. There's no additional application or configuration of different screens to show based off different requirements. It's just boom, it works right away. And I think the other thing is us taking a step in the direction of including AI in the analysis of the cards, of the dynamometer cards. I think that's something that's exciting to everyone that we're hearing, but also adding to that is the precedent. Well, what's next there? What are we going to be able to do next? And I think the ideas have already been flowing about what's the next step for AI and IPOC, and I think that it's got a pretty clear, at least the idea of a path of where we should be headed. But the ideas that we're hearing from the customers are very cool, and they make sense. And when trying to figure out where does AI, where's an appropriate place for it in oil and gas or other critical infrastructure industries, I think that there's a good example here that's going to be set. But anyways, hope that answers your question.
It does, Al. No, it does. I think that's great, and I think one of the things I want to do is when we get once we get through the demo, guys, let's touch back on that AI topic, because that is going to be a great call to action for anybody that's listening. And again, if you're a producer and operator, you're definitely want to pay attention to that. So what I'm hearing right now is you have complexity. So the complexity is simple, especially if you're already an Ignition user. And as you guys know, oil and gas is actually the larger base of Ignition customers, and it's always been that way. And so if you watch this, I think you really want to gravitate to that if you're using Ignition and you are a producer. If you're in West Texas, in the Permian, if you're in the Haynesville, anywhere in any of the other oil plays that are typical in Texas, Louisiana, Utah, Oklahoma, New Mexico, you name them, you can take advantage of IPOC, it sounds like.
Yeah. And just as a side note as well, Pat, one of my first jobs in this industry was, I carried around an echo meter case with a dynamometer that I strapped on, shooting fluid levels with a 22 shot or a CO2, blank, and capturing all the data that you guys are now capturing like immediately, right? And people have been doing that for a while too, but old school, man. I was at the forefront of that, maybe before you were even. So it's really cool to see these things connected and just happening automatically, and you don't have to go out there and strap on equipment to do it. So, and I know that's like modern age, but that's how old I am. I'm telling a story. So yeah.
So guys, let's run through this demo. We obviously know Pat, tell us how it connects. What are the different protocols? If we're talking about Modbus, TCP, are we talking about Modbus? Are we talking about, hey, there's room for MQTT? Kind of walk us through that, and then let's go through maybe in your mind, hey, what are the top maybe 5 to 7 things that you believe any producer would want to know?
Yeah. So let me open up to the screen that I will spend a lot of time on. There's a lot of bells and whistles in here, but I'll navigate to that while I speak to the protocol. So I'm going to come to one of my test wells here. We have a Lufkin pump off controller here at the office locally, so I'm going to navigate to that. But it really depends on the controller type. So there's a whole bunch of legacy controllers out there that only support Modbus serial. There's newer ones that support Modbus TCP, OPC directly from the controller. But leveraging a platform like Ignition gives us a lot of flexibility in that space. So no matter what the controller supports, we can pull it using that protocol, but then take that data and host it over OPC UA or publish it to an MQTT broker. So there's a lot of options. There's a lot of flexibility in that space. Most pump off controllers that we interface with, they're Modbus TCP. They just always have been.
Yes.
And that's a manufacturer decision. That's the vendor decision. Ignition has Modbus TCP built in, so that's not a problem. As long as they are TCP, if they're serial based and they already have, and a lot of the operators that we deal with, they have legacy radios out in the field, and it's going to cost tens of millions of dollars to replace that. So they've got 900 megahertz radios on every well, and they're slave to master, and you can only pull one well at a time. So it's round robin. I'm going to talk to well number one, get my data back, and rotate. And they've bloated this network. I mean, some have thousands of wells on one master radio, so it can take hours to get around that round robin cycle. And that's not really our problem, but we are trying to help solve that and alleviate as much of those problems as we can. But there's again, Ignition and its interoperability with any other third-party OPC server that alleviates a lot of those problems and makes a lot of those problems a lot easier to deal with. So we do support out-of-the-box native communication to these controllers using Ignition's drivers. That's a no-brainer. We also interface with KEP server, top server, AutoSol ACM. We're partnering with AutoSol with a lot of our projects. That's going extremely well. We had a lot of energy at the ICC conference last year where a lot of the people in the audience were saying, hey, do you support ACM? Do you integrate with ACM from AutoSol? At the time, we didn't. And I was surprised to see how many oil operators are using AutoSol's product. And so we immediately left the conference, called AutoSol, got a hold of the product, and we now have full integration with ACM. And that's where we're seeing a lot of the communication is using AutoSol's drivers and their products. So that's where we're seeing a lot of our communication and protocol handling is just done with AutoSol.
Yeah.
But if native makes sense, then Ignition's the platform that can do that very well. So I'll jump right into demoing this screen if you guys are okay with that.
Yeah, go ahead, Pat.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, one of the big things we hear from, and I'll show the group summary, a group status page in a second, but really I have a well, I have a controller on that well, and I need to see real-time data. I want to pull some cards. I want to do some work on that well. So this is our well status page, and it's built in Ignition perspective. So you get a lot of that cool styling, and we're starting to put in some of our own custom CSS and flair on this thing to make it a little bit more custom. But the main idea here is, what are the main things I care about? What are the main things I need to see? So is the well running? Is it shut down? What's its state? What's the network configuration? What are the real-time values happening from that load cell? Any analog inputs or discrete inputs that are wired into that controller, what are they currently reading out there in the field? And what are some daily values that are being aggregated from that controller? But I want to see cards and trends. That's what everyone always says. Show me the cards. Show me the trends over time. And so we can do that right here from the main interface. We don't have to open up pop-ups and other windows and navigate somewhere else. So we are grabbing cards natively from these controllers. We are grabbing surface cards, downhole cards, shutdown cards, startup cards, and malfunction/fault cards. And we're grabbing those on a time-based mechanism. So, and that's configurable. We can grab every 30 minutes or every hour or however fast you want to grab cards. We grab them and store them. Users can also grab them whenever they want by selecting what type of card and hitting get card. I'm not going to do that with my test unit here at the office, but that is a thing that people do quite often out in the field. We have live trends built into the screen that users can manipulate and play with and add to the chart. But the card viewer is where people get really excited, because doing something like this in Ignition is, I think, where people get hung up on, like, you're never going to be able to replace these legacy proprietary softwares that are out there because they do cards, and it's, well, here you go, there's cards. But it gets people really excited, which I think is funny. But I think the AI piece is where we get excited. So I'm going to pull up a few cards here, but here's load and position data plotted on a chart, and we can stack these on top of each other so we can see changes over time. But the first question we get asked every time is, well, what diagnostics are you providing? Is that a good card? Is that a bad card? Tell me what is going on with that well. I'm not an engineer. I'm not an expert in downhole, production and optimization.
Who's asking that question? An engineer, a young engineer today, or is
No,
that like the SCADA people?
even
Because most
operations,
people who look
SCADA,
at cards can kind of just know what a good card looks like.
I
right?
agree with you. I'm like, well, look at that thing right there. That's gas interference. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's kids right out of school are like, I want to.
Well, yeah, there are definitely programs that look at the data that come out of a card, and they've been around a while too, right? So it's you can also lay that on top of that, but I would imagine people can also tweak the way they want to do that these days. I mean, I would also imagine, like in y'all's basin, at least, like local to Bakersfield, that a production engineer might be responsible for looking at, I don't know, what, 500 wells a day, 1,000 wells, maybe more, right? Because these are kind of like older legacy type wells, but he may be looking at cards all day. They're just kind of sifting through them, right? So I guess the idea of analytics around those, but the way you've decoupled the data, anything's possible. So right?
Yeah.
I mean that's the main point of this. So
Good point, right? So if you've got 50 wells in your system, you can look at cards manually, right? But if you've got thousands, like you said, I would want a system that would diagnose problems and tell me about a problem. That's where software and analytics really are moving, right? A human shouldn't have to look at anything. It should just tell you when there's a problem. So that's kind of the piece of diagnostics where I think people are going with that question is, what kind of diagnostics do you have on cards? It's because they want the system to tell them where a problem exists, as opposed to manually looking at these images and going, oh, that's what that is. And I mean, we have a couple of customers in Texas, and they're around the 1,000 well range. We're talking with a few customers in Wyoming, and they're in the couple hundred well range. There's several that we're talking to that are in the tens of thousands of wells. And so those are the guys that are saying, I need something to tell me when there's a problem.
For sure.
I don't have time to look at 10,000 wells, right?
yeah.
So we made a strategic decision early on, though, to not try to figure out how to programmatically diagnose wellbore and reservoir issues. So we could spend a lot of time cranking out code, if this, then this, if this, then this. But we felt this was a very applicable position for AI. It makes sense. There's a lot of data here. You could even just take the picture of the card. You don't even need the data.
Yeah, this is an easy connection, I think, for most people.
And I was going to wait to the, Pat, I wanted to wait to the end, but you're getting me excited here. And let me explain, because you're getting me excited because I think when people think of AI, this is not just connecting some sort of MCP server to get information. You're now diving into like convolutional neural networks where you're taking those 2D images and you're taking the surface of those downhole those cards and those 2D images for position load series. You can actually stack those together and create and look at what's happening with those cards using a neural network. It's possible. So you're alluding to that. You're also, when people, even if you weren't touching neural networks and all you wanted was simple machine learning, right now you can affect somebody's lease operating expense or overall cost. Why? Because a lot of these folks that put these units out there, they have their own suite of locked up machine learning stuff that they want you to pay for. When the reality is we can take that data from Ignition, we can place that on platforms like Snowflake, and we can now extract those geometric and physical features of those cards and use them in machine learning models that are available right inside of Snowpark. And you're saving that producer a lot of money not paying for those paywall tools.
Right.
Yeah. Well, what are those big boys? What do they think of all this? I mean, I'm curious if they haven't knocked on your door already. But yeah, let's keep on
Keep
going.
going, Pat.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
exciting, man.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click Get AI Analysis right here down at the bottom. So we threw in this button and just said, hey, we're just going to throw this pictures and all the load and position data at AI and see what it says, right? And that's what we did. And we were really surprised with what we got. And our prompts to the large language model is very basic. We could get very sophisticated with these prompts. But what we're considering doing next is prompting the LLM with this data. And you see that's about 5 seconds, but I just got back a summary of the card and also optimization recommendations. I've even had a few that I loaded in here that was like, hey, your pump fillage is 90% and you're running 20 hours a day. You should speed this unit up. You could make more oil, right? It's down to that level where it's just like, speed the unit up.
Yes.
That's pretty darn cool to get those kinds of recommendations.
Yeah, and then your next phase is putting in your power consumption data around speeding that unit up too, right? And see what is the ultimate threshold. But I would think most engineers would take this data, go tinker with it, sit back a few days, and then go look at the cards and see what happened. And then hopefully by the end of the week, they're emailing their boss about
right
all the oil they found, right? So
get that bonus, you know.
Yeah.
So we were at the conference last year, obviously, and we sat into one of the sessions where a couple of the guys from Inductive were showcasing their AI integration in Ignition, and it was a chat AI session that they had been working on, and so that got that kind of piqued our curiosity around how do we do something like that here in IPOC. So what we're considering is starting this conversation for the user, prompting the LLM, but providing a chat at the bottom of this window to let them refine these results or ask the engine more questions about this card and get more insight. And then also, if we're pulling cards automatically, say once an hour, why not feed that card to AI as it comes in and store the results? And now we have all the results over time, and then we could feed the AI all of the historical analysis it's given us and say, hey, based on all of the cards we've gathered over the last year, tell me something I should go do, right? What should I do to improve?
Or you increase your well characteristics too. Like, so just because it's just from one well, the card could be tell of similar story to an offset that's 300 feet away, that's got more history, right?
Absolutely.
So having all that well data, the downhole data, all that information in there. I mean, just we're talking crazy stuff. So I mean, we've got the same kind of playbook with some stuff that we're developing, where the first start is the chat piece, where it's, hey, here's a subset of data that's been scrubbed well, alarm data, pipeline data, whatever it may be, and at least just having the operator be able to interact and talk to that data the same way I do when we're doing like a full-scale alarm rationalization should be done, immediately on the fly, going forward in most control rooms. Same thing with production alarming and optimization here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really exciting. It's really exciting stuff. And I think everyone's trying to figure out how to put AI into their business, right? And I think it's almost a problem right now where it's AI is a buzzword, it's this cool shiny thing, and people are trying to find problems to solve with it, as opposed to, I have a problem and AI is the perfect tool to solve it. I feel like that's, if I were to sum up our implementation of AI in IPOC, is there already is a problem. There's a lot of data on these wells in the format of cards and other things. AI is perfect for this thing, as opposed to, I've got this AI tool, let's figure out something. And nothing has, in my opinion, nothing has really seemed to, it's like, that's cool, but would I use it? Does it actually solve my problem? I feel like that's a challenge today. I hear that a lot, talking to a lot of people. This is the first time where I plugged in something and I thought, wow, this could be very powerful. This is actually going to solve problems. So that was exciting to see.
Pat, let me ask you this. So right now you guys have this hooked up. Would you say that the card data that you have is there a plan where, hey, this is actually structured as a UDT within Ignition? Or is that just, hey, we recognize that there are data sets that come off of these cards that are easily transferable or translatable that aren't just fit into, let's say, the large language model for IPOC, but if someone was said, hey, we have I don't know, sometimes you have regional players, they're not super majors, but they're regional players that want to take that data and they want to hand it off to the business, right? So right now you've got it working where it appears you're maybe connected MCP or what you're doing, but I'm talking more like, hey, what about a lot of companies, like you said, they want to go AI ready. So they want to take it to the corporate level. So if you're a regional player, you want to be able to take that data out from and push it to the business, right?
Yeah.
To look at it that way. Is that something that's in the cards for you guys?
Yeah. So our mechanism behind the scenes in how we grab cards, it actually is a UDT in Ignition.
Great.
So we're automatically creating an instance of a UDT, and those have it depends on the controller, but there's anywhere from 200 to 400 typically different data points in a card.
Yes.
And that UDT is set up in a way that we have them. The UDT gets instantiated, and all of those tags are historized. So it is available in the historian. And then once we're done collecting the card, we delete the UDT just for memory's sake. But that is in the historian. That's one piece.
Yes.
The other piece is we're also storing every load and position as a JSON object in our database model. So that could be replicated into a data warehouse or a data lakehouse, and the enterprise could take advantage of that data. So there's multiple options there, right? We could take the historical data in the historian, feed it to a true time series historian, and it could do something interesting with it. Or we could feed the database record off to a warehouse, and then it can get sucked into any reporting tool or fun thing in the cloud that could take advantage of it. So we have again, Ignition. There's so many different options of moving that data, but we are storing it several different ways today.
Yeah. I think, automatically my head's already thinking about if it's an object or flat JSON or an object, you can carry that over to an AWS S3 bucket and play with it there. You can do the same thing in Azure, and then Snowflake. You can take that UDT and carry the Sparkplug B message over to IoT Bridge and do it there and do the same. So I guess what I'm saying is that you're speaking now to AI readiness, which is a big, in my mind, has been one of the biggest topics to come up for anybody that is, like you said, they're trying to solve a problem, but in reality, what they mean is we need to get things so we're AI ready, and it looks like you've done that at on a pump-off control, at the pump-off control level.
Yeah. You need those foundational pieces. And again, speaking back to why did we build this in Ignition, it already has that. It's baked into the product. Those guys at Inductive are thinking about those things, right? Making this platform interoperable, integrating with all of those cool, flashy things that are on the roadmap and coming down the pipeline. It already does those things. So if we plug our solution into it, we get it pretty much for free. But yeah, that's a tough thing. I see a lot of companies that will go buy a very expensive tool and expect to turn it on and hit the easy button, and it solves all their problems.
Right.
You have to do the hard work of building the foundational pieces that make it so you can hit the easy button. And that's what we're trying to do with these solutions is all of those things, like you said, are kind of baked into the solution so that you don't have to go do it yourself. If you use a product like IPOC, it's built on Ignition, so you get all of that goodness. But then we're thinking about those things. We're thinking about modeling and building the system in a way that it does integrate to the platforms that you mentioned.
Yeah, and I think one of the things you've taken out here is because you've structured these UDTs for your cards, it comes down to, as you know, usually when data engineers want to get their hands on it, they have their ETL method, their extract. They want to transform the data and then load it. But in this case, because there's such a readiness available, it's almost what I call Zero-ETL. You have very little hands on a product that's prepped. It's available for you and ready to be used, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And Any other whistles you want to pick up here? Any other bells we missed? Maybe that if you were in the, obviously you guys are in the boots of other producers. Any other bills or any things you want to touch on? Because I have a couple I want to things I want to just throw out there that I've seen right off the bat. Just some really great things.
Yeah, all the basic things that you would expect from something like this. It's a SCADA system at its core, so we can start wells, we can stop wells, reset alarms, sync clocks, make sure your controllers are synced to the proper times for rollover of daily aggregates, those types of things. Configuration is a big piece, and we expose every configuration and set point register so that they can be easily modified from the application. You don't have to drive out to the well and plug in a Baker board or some type of a configuration handheld tablet and make configuration changes at the site. You can do all of it from here. So we pull all of that data in our UDT model, expose it in this window. There's also the ability to track your inventory from a surface and downhole level. Now, speaking back to us not developing our own diagnostic engine, none of this is needed for diagnostics. Those other products that are kind of the monopolies on the market, they use this information for their diagnostics. They need to know the size of the unit. They need to know the stroke length. They need to know the downhole information. That's how they're generating diagnostics. We're using AI, so we don't need it for that, but we're still tracking all of it here because we found a lot of operators don't have expensive tools to store this information in. They don't have a ERP system. They don't have the kind of infrastructure to store this kind of information. So we do have the ability for users to store all of their surface equipment, what type of pumping unit, what size, what kind of motor do you have on the well, what's all your downhole equipment configuration, rods, casing, tubing, what type of material, how long are they, what type of pump, what size. All of that's available in the application. So those are some pieces that have been very important for a lot of users that we have talked to.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things is of these configuration points that I mentioned, being able to change set points from the application. Awesome. We expect that from SCADA nowadays. I need to be able to change a set point. But we're also storing those set points and capturing them so that you can see them over time. And not to be Big Brother, but that does help if somebody made a change that we want to go catch and figure out, when did this get changed? Who changed it? But equipment dies. Equipment dies in the field, right? So if I have a pump off controller that fails and I put a brand new one out there, how do I get it back to where it was right before it failed? We can restore all the last configuration that was at that well. So we're storing that historical configuration for disaster recovery. There's also been where one of our operators will look at one well and hey, you're a kick butt well. You do really this well's killing it. This well over here is not doing well. What if we downloaded the same configuration to this well of set points? Would that impact and have an improvement effect on that well? So they're even using it for that kind of feature and functionality, and so that interesting ideas of how to use that kind of data. But if we have that data stored, again, we're thinking about how could we leverage AI to take advantage of that information and do something useful with it, where maybe there's a way to, and this is something we're going to be investigating next, is how do we take all the configuration of these wells? How do we take the real-time data that's being generated off of these wells and cards, combine all that information, and say and classify, hey, this is a good well and it makes a lot of oil, and this is a bad well and it's struggling and we do a lot of workovers on it. What's different about these two wells? AI, tell me, what should I be doing on this bad well that you're seeing on this good well, right? Maybe all of our good wells have these characteristics, these set point values, these things are happening that it's hard to detect from a human level and have AI make those recommendations. So those are some things we're thinking about with all of this information. How do we make the information more useful? And then we're also looking at generating theoretical production numbers, taking this data and saying, hey, you don't need to run this through a testing facility. You don't need to put a flow rate meter out there and a water cut probe and figure out, okay, I'm making 100 barrels and it's 90% water and 10% oil, you're making this much. That's expensive.
Right.
And to do it on a scale of thousands of wells, it costs a lot of money, and those facilities require a lot of maintenance. Could we use IPOC to generate theoretical numbers that are pretty close to accurate, right? Could we say with a percentage of certainty, we think this is a good production number and it's worth allocation? So we're looking at all those opportunities, and I think AI is really going to play a big piece in it. And we're really trying, like you said, democratize this data, but use this data in the platform to help users make decisions.
Yeah. So I think, to kind of sum some of these up, what I'm really hearing is that number one, it sounds like at the end of the day, you guys are able to reduce LOE. You're minimizing a lot of windshield time because of the things that you can do in terms of remote control, right? A lot of exception. You can avoid a lot of the deferred production. You already mentioned that if you're catching, pump off issues, and with combining those DynaCard and the alarm analytics, especially with AI. You talked about just kind of increasing runtime and reducing failures and doing better tuning at a global level with your pump off strategy. That's one thing you talked about. And you even touched on stroke optimization and cycle controls that you could have that are built on the product. The other thing I saw is that the organizational impact. What I mean by that is, and I know Jeff, and you can speak to this, is that a lot of times they have these, I call them optimizers, right? These are your elite production operators. They're become optimizers. And it's not that you're reducing the role, but what I'm saying is that you're making organizational impact because you're enabling smaller, more skilled teams to oversee more wells at any time with not just the product, but as you mentioned, leveraging AI as an augmenter to what's happening in the field. The last thing is that how Ignition licensing and its total integration helps you. There's no doubt in my mind that your cost is now reduced compared to these monolithic paywall providers. Did I hit that in there? And just kind of talking over through some of these things.
I think you nailed it. Yeah, you're hired.
Yeah.
And so that leads me to the next thing. How does someone get started? I think, when I think about this, I'm a producer. I don't have 10,000 wells, but I do want to get started, and I know that I can optimize. So where do I start? Is it, hey, let's pick a pilot area. Let's inventory your POC and your current, pump off control vendors. Let's map a comms path. Tell us how that works with you guys.
Yeah, I think that, for somebody that's ready to take that step or those next steps, it's going to come down to evaluating what their current scenario is like. Everybody's infrastructure is going to be different. And then, like you said, where's a good place to start? We have a customer recently that, has maybe 15,000 wells or something like that. But they want to start small. They want to start with a lower priority field, a lower priority set of fields, a set of wells. And so we're working with them to map out that strategy. So I think that it kind of depends on where you're at in the journey, but either way, there is a free pilot, demo, trial, however you want to call it, available that we offer. And we'll work with your team to get everything configured, dialed in. There's a couple deployment options. One is standalone, one is integrated into your current Ignition application. So, based on that, determines, the level of complexity of how much we need to work with the current team involved. But yeah, say, if you're ready to take that next step, we could set up an easy, quick demo, talk about the specifics about your environment and, determine what the best next steps are. But as far as all the customers that we currently are talking to and that are looking down to head down this path, that seems to be pretty 100% across the board how it's going down.
Wow. So I think, what I'm hearing is, here on the show, I mean, obviously, if you watch this, we're going to provide a few links for the Avadine team as well. We really want you to go in. It sounds like what I'm hearing is you can start, you can pick a path, pick a pilot, inventory your POCs, talk about, mapping a comms path, some simple data modeling, even security and how you integrate it across your platforms. And then probably the last part is how you work with your teams and any sort of change management, Pat. That's always seems to be a big deal when you're talking to someone in the field. But it sounds like your team has it. You guys can definitely roll and get a demo going for anybody. What's in the future? You already mentioned quite a few of them. So I think, give us one last thing. If you had to tell a producer right now, hey, here's why we think that this is going to benefit you. And if there was some, I don't know, I wouldn't say a call to action. That's kind of a cheesy word. But if you said, hey, there's something I think you should do, what would that be, guys?
Man, I don't know. I think if I spend five minutes with anybody and just talk about my background and the challenges that I've had to overcome with licensing and high cost, like these paywalls you mentioned.
Yeah.
That's usually what turns the heads of upper management, leadership, the guys who are writing the checks, is if I can save them money, they will say yes. And so you mentioned it. Yeah, this is incredibly less expensive than those other products because we are leveraging the Ignition ecosystem and community mindset. It is, how do we enable value but not break the bank? That is what we're doing. And I remember when I started with Ignition, it was, how are these guys even making money? Because how cheap it was compared to what we were using, it didn't make sense. My brain was like, you're gonna close your doors. How are you even making money? And now look at them. They've blown up. They've swallowed up the market. I think that's what solutions like this can do. Get people excited, share the goodness. We all win. It's not going to be expensive. If that model works with inductive automation, with other companies just like them, it can work for a product like this. We're out to solve problems, not just like keep cranking up the price tag so that we make a margin, profit. It is, let's do good things together. It's not going to be expensive. It will, over time, be a benefit to us, but let's solve this problem that everyone else has. They all have the same problem. The softwares they're using are just not good, and they cost a lot of money. Let's solve that problem.
Love the mindset, Pat, and that is, ideologically right, like lock and step with OpSite, and we are developing products as well. Not anything that's competing with what you're doing, but the same idea is. Why would we pay for that piece of software when we can dev it for the same price as an annual subscription almost in certain ways? And AI allows everyone to catch up really quick. So to come out there and slap on crazy price tags, you're probably not going to last long. So I think you got the right idea and the right mindset to create value. And even if you're talking to the 15,000 well guy, what's a POC? This is nothing. It might as well peel this off just in case it works, right? So it's a very low risk when you're looking at scale like that, especially if they're involved with those other players like you mentioned.
So with that, guys, we appreciate your time. And I do want to just finally say, like and subscribe, especially if you are a producer and your cards are stacked against you. I think this is something that you want to take a look at, is the team at Avadine, IPOC. Thank you, guys, for being on the show. Al and Pat, thank you so much. We appreciate you being here. We want to keep you longer, but we got to go. This was great. I'm your co-host with the Energy Tech Podcast, Mike Flores. Like and subscribe. That was a great show, man.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Appreciate
y'all.
Yep. Thanks, guys.